Hey all, welcome to my channel. I'm Amber and today I'm going to be sharing with you my wrap up for the month of March. I cannot believe that we're already at the end of March. And I'm even more shocked by the fact that I have already read 15 books in the month of March. Um, I don't think that I will actually finish any more books because this is the 30th of this month. Um, and April starts this Friday, I believe. So we only have like one more day of this month, which I kind of forgot because I was like all over on Instagram, like, if I finish the two books I'm in the middle of, I will have read like 70 books. And I'm like, now I'm like, oops, I shouldn't have said that because actually April is like right around the corner. So, yeah, 15 books. It's been a while since I've been back on here, but I come and go as my reading mood comes and goes. I think I've talked about this here, but just, obviously not that many people watch my stuff. So in 2020, when the pandemic had first just started, I just couldn't like force myself to read if I wasn't in the mood for it. I just wasn't gonna force myself to try. And I noticed in doing so that when I was in the mood for reading, I read more and enjoyed it more than I have ever done before, which just goes to show that when we try to force ourselves into things that, we know we enjoy, but we're not in the mood for, it can cause more problems. So I've just stopped doing that. So in the past 2 years, January and February have my one of the strong months. Those are like my months that I typically actually enjoy reading. I think a lot of that has to do with watching other people's start of the year videos and their drive and motivation and excitement for the year rubs off on me, and I want to, I'm all excited and I want to like read more because of that. But this year that wasn't the case. So like in those last 2 years, I read like 10 books within each of those two first months of the year. This year I read nothing in January and February, but in March, as I have said, 15 books. I'm still like astounded over the idea that I read 15 books, which is the most I have ever read. And I'm actually in the middle of a book, and I'm going to be starting two other books, which I like. One of them I know I will not be able to finish this week, but I do plan to finish another one like right at the beginning of the week. So yeah, it's just I'm in the mood of reading and I'm excited. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about the books I read because I think that might put me in a slump, but we shall see. I'm not going to force myself to make videos. I will make videos when I want to make videos. But anyways, before I get into talking about what I actually read, I thought I would just share with you some stats that I keep, my general stats I keep track of in my book journal. So let's just talk about that 15 books. Out of those 50 books, 9 I read physically, only one was an ebook, 3 I read as audiobooks, and 2 were mixed media. Then where I got them, or where I was reading them from, 5 were came from Scribd, 10 came from the library. So I didn't read a single book off my own shelves, whether it was physical or ebook, and I'm really disappointed in that because I have plenty of books on my shelves that I have not read yet. So I really would like to get started. So I need to like find a balance between my library, especially, um, and my own books. And I think I have a way of doing that. And so we shall see if that happens. But anyways, next, all the books were first time reads, and I think obviously that's not that surprising considering the fact that I never read a single book off my own shelves. 12 were adult, 2 were YA, and 1 were middle grade. And again, this isn't surprising to me. I am not a huge fan of YA, and I've just started really getting into middle grade. And I actually do enjoy middle grade a lot more than I was expecting to. But yeah, YA is just not my favorite age range. And I don't want to like, I'm not gonna stop trying them, but they're not the ones that I like. Obviously, they're not the ones I will pick books from automatically. So, anyways, let's just get going with the books. The first thing that I read this month was a poetry collection by Cone Felix, which was called Build Yourself a Boat. And I don't really have a lot to say on this one because it's a poetry collection, and I the last poetry collection I have read was probably like 3 or 4 years ago, so I don't really read poetry. And since because it's been so long since I have read one, I'm not sure if I am up to par on how to talk about them. I did enjoy it for what it was, and I think I do need to reread it because I was reading it in a moment where I was going through a very high stress situation, and I was just reading it to occupy my mind, so I probably wasn't paying enough attention to what I was reading, and so therefore it might have played a part in why some things went over my head. But I do think that there is something to get out of this poetry collection, and if you're somebody, whether you're not like a regular reader or you read poetry here or there, you're probably going to get it more out of it than me, who hasn't read a poetry collection for, like, as I said, 3 to 4 years. And I didn't rate this one because of that. Then I read 3 books all in one series, and I want to talk about these together because although they are technically standalones, the only thing that ties them together is the protagonist or the main lead of these books. The issue that I had with the first one runs through the last 2 books, which ended up with me DNFing the third book. So let's just talk about that on these 3 books. So the first one was Silent Voices, which is the 4th book in the series. Telling Tales, what is actually the 2nd book in the series, and then Hidden Depths, which was the 3rd book in the series. And these are all by Ann Cleeves, and this is all part of the Vera Stanhope mystery novel series. And also, if you are a fan of BBC British shows, you may know about the TV series called Vera, which was inspired by the character Vera that's in these books. I actually own Silent Voices physically, and then I found out that Scribd had them as audiobooks. So when I finished Silent Voices, I decided to listen to them, as I felt like it. And so let's just talk about these books. Silent Voices, I really love that mystery, and I love how she was able to create the atmosphere, the tone, the setting, all of it. And the mystery itself is really great, and it kept me going, it kept me guessing, and I just really enjoyed the process of reading and figuring out this mystery. And same with Telling Tales, although Telling Tales is a little bit different, a lot different in a way, because half the book is told through the villagers' perspectives, and you only see Vera like once or twice, and then like halfway through we switch to Vera's perspective, and then you're seeing her investigating it. So that one felt more like a literary novel versus a mystery novel, just because it feels like you were more of like looking in on these specific people, who all may or may not have a part to play in what happened with this case, but you're really just seeing how they are being affected by the events that is the basis for this novel. Hidden Depths is, you go back to the way Silent Voices is, so it's nothing changed. And overall, I really enjoyed the first 2 things. And again, I DNF'd Hidden Depths. So let's just talk about the issues that I see running through these books, and that is fat phobia. I'm kind of confused by why this author felt the need to create a character to be overweight, as she seems to clearly have issues with people who are overweight. She seems to hate her own protagonist, and the imagery and the wording that she uses around Vera's physical appearance is stereotypical and just, especially in Hidden Depths, offensive to me. And one of the reasons, not only is the offensive fat phobic language and imagery that she uses caused me to end up DNFing and not wanting to read anything more by this author, but in Hidden Depths, it really confused me as to why this author thought that somebody who just lost their child, found their child dead, and was being questioned by Vera, would even be thinking about Vera at all in that terms. Like, she wouldn't even be paying attention to her at all in that way. And in any way, really, and it lasted like almost what felt like 2 pages worth of just this woman tearing into Vera's physical appearance. So it was really frustrating to read. And I don't really understand how I looked and looked at reviews just to see if anybody mentioned the fatphobic language, and no one does. And I'm just here being like, if I can see it, others should too. It's really confusing. And it's been something that I have been noticing with books that I notice having problematic aspects to it that nobody else seems to have noticed. I'm just here, am I reading too much into things? It's a weird like feeling, but I did not appreciate the language that this author used around Vera. And I was kind of curious if I read her other series, which is called it's the Sheldon series, and again, it was created into a TV series. So I'm curious how she wrote him because he's a man, and I don't know why I feel like this, but I feel like there's a very high possibility that he's going to be written in a more positive light, and I feel like that says something if that's the case. But yeah, like I like Vera as a character. I just don't understand why this author felt the need to do that. But moving on to something that was actually better, which was called A Kind of Spark by Elle Nicole, and this is a middle grade novel centered on Addie, who's an 11-year-old autistic girl who is just starting her her new school year, and the teacher there is starting to teach them about women who in the past were accused of witchcraft and how they were um, tortured and murdered for it. And as Addie gets caught up in the research surrounding that, she starts to feel like she can connect and relate to these women, and also that the town wants to forget what they did in the past to these women. But she's determined not to let that happen. And this is one of my favorite books of this month. I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved Addie, and the story was just, it made me angry in moments. It made my heart break, and it made my heart whole. It was just like a really beautifully written story that had a character that you can really relate to and understand. And it really takes on the discussion of like how people view those who are autistic, and how many think that like autism is a checklist, and if you can check them all off, that's what autism is. And so she just goes in, like she talks about the fact that autism looks differently on each person, and that it's a spectrum, and that they're not all the same in that way, like, and so I appreciated that. And I also appreciated the fact that this story had the family fully present. They felt very three-dimensional and real, with mistakes and imperfections and all that. And I just loved it because it's very rare, like in YA, it seems very rare to see a family there being very present in that way in the story. And it was just refreshing to see that. I don't know if this is typical of middle grade, but it's just not something that I have noticed when it comes to the younger books that are targeted towards younger ages. And so again, it was refreshing to see that, and I really enjoyed the process of seeing Addie make friends with this girl Audrey, who's a new student in this school, and seeing how Audrey has to like learn and adjust her own ideas surrounding autism, and having to learn what are certain things that that Addie does not can't handle, like touches and certain touches and stuff, and learning to be able to understand and accept that without being upset by it. And it's really interesting to see that play out too. So there's a lot of things in this book that I think that especially for people who are not autistic can get out of this book, and I think it's a great place for like parents to read this to their children and talk and discuss this, the topic of autism and how people treat those who are autistic. So I just love this book, and I want to read everything else that this author has out so far. And then we're going to go back to a couple books that I did not like. So the first one is Bunny by Mona Awad. And this one is about Samantha, who I believe is starting her second year of university. And the previous year, she was in this writing workshop with these 4 other girls that call themselves the Bunnies. And they nickname each other the Bunnies. So if you and so if you saw them, they would be like, hey bunny, hey bunny. So like you wouldn't know who was who if you didn't actually know their names. Um, and then this year she's dreading going back into this workshop because she expects to be just as excluded, an outcast as she was then. But lo and behold, she gets an invitation to become part of their clique. Yeah, I could spoil this book because there's some things I want to talk about when it comes to certain things, but I'm not going to. So let's just say this. I really didn't like this book. Like I was expecting the weirdness of it, and I was okay with the weird aspects of this book, but this book was also confusing to me. I couldn't understand the how or the why, which I wouldn't have minded the how so much if I could at least understood the why of it. It doesn't make sense to me why they were doing what they were doing. And I also like I get that when Samantha becomes part of the bunnies, when she kind of changes the writing to be like so that you're kind of like in it with her, like you're like so you don't know who is who. It's like everybody is bunny, but it got annoying and got kind of confusing, and it felt very repetitive. So I kind of like lost track of the story because of that, as I went along. And so like I was just really confused about a lot of things. I was confused by the twist. I couldn't understand like when did this thing that is revealed in the twist happen exactly? Like, is this why she was drawn into the clique? Like, I don't fully understand this. And also the timing of everything was really confusing to me because I was just like, she was starting her second year, and this book did not really give a clear sense of time passing. So when we end the book with them graduating, I'm like, how in the world did we get this far into the future? This is like also there was a casual sipping of a ableist slur that I did not appreciate. Like it took me out of the reading. I was like, nobody has actually mentioned this fact, and I think that one, we're so easily accepting of these words that are actually harmful to people. Um, so like I just want to make it clear that there is an ableist slur in there, and it wasn't done purposefully to like talk and discuss and challenge these things surrounding that word. Um, so just to let that be known. And the author shouts from the rooftop that we're about being progressive, we're not we're not misogynistic, we're not about heteronormativity, blah 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 blah. Yet the thing that they're doing feeds right into heteronormativity and I think misogyny. I was just like here being like, what you're creating is like this whole you're purposely creating something that fits this heteronormative, but old-fashioned ideas of what romantic partner is supposed to be. And I'm just like, if you can do it for there's again, this would be spoiler if I talked about it. So there's like a lot of things here that I didn't appreciate, especially the fact that throughout this book we see Samantha and this woman that are friends, but you can tell that there's more to it than just friendship, and she insinuates and not even insinuates it, like she kind of makes it very clear that there's more than friendship here, and yet the end of the book is with her running off with some guy. And I get that there's a certain thing that happens with the friend, but like, why do we have to go through all that just for her to go off with some dude? Like, this book just there's a difference between you're not being progressive against misogyny, working against misogyny, working against heteronormativity just by saying it. You have to be it. And nothing that happened in this book shows me that they were being anything other than what they were claiming not to be. And I also really do not like the whole women hating on women, because I feel like that in itself is feeding into misogyny. It is just, and there was no good reason for it. There was no reason for why any of them hated each other. It was just that they couldn't stand the idea that either one of them were doing something, accomplishing something that they weren't able to do at that point. And I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stomach this book, and I gave it 2 stars. And then we move on to Moon Called by Patricia Briggs, which is the first book in the Mercy Thompson series. Now, this is where we're introduced to Mercy Thompson, who is a shape-shifting car mechanic, and she grew up and was raised by a werewolf pack that she has been kicked out of because of a forbidden romance. And now she is living in Portland, where she owns her own garage, and she is a neighbor of a werewolf named Adam, who is the alpha of his pack. And then one day, a young boy arrives at her door looking for work, and she realizes really quickly that he is a newly turned werewolf, and she ends up having to take him to Adam. But then things happen, which ends up with her having to go back to her old pack for help. Now, I will say that what I enjoyed about this book was the fact that there was this whole mystery of who was behind the things that were happening within the book, and that kept me reading this book. Is the only reason why I finished this book. I enjoyed that part, and the fact that this was fast paced and easy just to get through, it really helped me to not DNF this book. Now, I have a lot of issues with this book. Colonizer language, the fact that she doesn't refer to them as either Native American or American or indigenous, or just by the actual tribes that they are from. Just right there, I do take a bit of an issue with there. But that I could have just been like, okay, this was written in 2006. We haven't fully, at that time, maybe we weren't right at there when it came to decolonizing our language. But then we have the fact that when Mercy is talking about the fact that she is a shapeshifter, she calls herself a walker, and this is on page 4, she says, the term derives from skinwalker, a Southwest Indian tribes who use a skin to turn into a coyote or some other animal and goes around causing disease or death. Now, I take multiple issues here, again, with the colonizer language of using Indian, but the fact that she couldn't even be bothered to use the actual tribe. It was a simple Google search to find out that this myth around skinwalkers was from the Navajo tribe. And if I could just find that very simply through a Google search, so could she. And in 2006, there's no way that Google did not exist at that time. Someone can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that there was a Google that she could have done. And and as an author, as somebody who is talking about indigenous folks, cultures, and history, she has a responsibility to make sure that she at least has the basics of things correct, especially when you're dealing with their myths and legends and stories. And she has no respect in that form, in my opinion. When she couldn't even she couldn't even be bothered to name them by their actual tribe here. But then also, disease and death. Why do I get the feeling that she is purposely trying to put it feels very much like she's a colonizer apologist here. One, because she tells us that skinwalkers, an indigenous story, is the ones going around spreading disease and death, when we know that it was the colonizers that were doing that. And secondly, when I went to look up the legend, the myth of Skinwalker, one, I found out, as I said real quickly, that this is Navajo lore, but that they also don't share the stories. So it's something that they very rarely have talked about and were willing to share, and we all know why. So it's a protected story. So of course, there's not a lot to go on when it comes to their stories. But she didn't care. She just went about and created all this nonsense about them spreading disease and death. Now, Skinwalker is an omen of death, but I couldn't find anything, maybe I didn't go far enough to prove that they went around spreading disease. So, and then the last issue that I have around this whole topic of the indigenous is the fact that she defends reservations. Now, she in doing this, she is talking about the Fae and how the Fae were trying to come out in the open. They wanted to be able to show their true selves. So they use glamour to like hide their true selves so they look like humans like everybody else. But the Grey Lords, who are the rulers of the Lesser Fae, wanted to see if this could work. And of course, it didn't work. Bigotry, prejudice, hate, and fear caused them to be put onto reservations. And she does acknowledge the problems, but at the same time that she acknowledges this is what she says on page 19. Whatever ills it created, the reservations had lessened the growing problem between the humans and the Fae. And I'm like, excuse me, because one, it's very clear that she understands that she's making parallels between the Fae and the indigenous and the reservations. She does not hide from that, but she defends it. So I'm here being like, reservations at that time are basically concentration camps. Let's look at this. They had no proper shelter. They were starved. They had no proper place to go to the bathroom so that disease wouldn't spread. They were told that they would be properly cared for, and that's why many of them chose, because it was the lesser of two evils, and of course, promises were fucking broken because that's what colonizers and white folks love to do. And so it's just like the growing ills between them didn't go away because they made a choice. It wasn't much of a fucking choice. It was either die there or die with your people, or they had a and a lot of them didn't know what they were getting into by choosing to be on the reservations. And let's not kid ourselves that the indigenous who are on reservations today aren't still dealing with issues. Like, they have no proper running water. I saw someone share the prices that they have to pay for just a ketchup, and I'm like, that's like 3 times as much as we have to pay for a bottle of ketchup. I'm just being here like, it's not just an issue here. These are people forced to live and deal with the fact that there are a whole bunch of people outside of these reservations living on stolen land. How would you fucking feel? This isn't a fucking choice. Like, you're defending something. Anyways, so yeah, I took really issue because this is like a white person colonizer apologist, and I didn't really appreciate the fact, as soon as I realized that this was a white person talking about these issues, I was like, ooh. And if I had known this beforehand, I would never have picked this book up, because I don't feel comfortable with white people talking about these issues in any sort of way. And this just proves my point that I have every right to be wary about it. The other things that are not as big of an issue here, but are issues for me, is the fact that she over-explains, repeatedly explains, and then explains the obvious. Like, there was like one moment where she tells us that this specific werewolf is a lone wolf, and then she goes on to explain something that I believe is self-explanatory. So I'm just like, okay, you clearly don't trust the reader, who I would assume that you're assuming that are all adults, aren't going to remember what you have to explain, have to say, and that we somehow aren't going to understand what a lone wolf is. And then I also couldn't understand why this author was so determined that Mercy needed a college degree for us to feel like she's smart. Like, we know that there are many people who do not have a college degree who are very smart and intelligent, and it's just a little bit ridiculous. And then the fact that not only is that, but like, she went to college for engineering degree, but then ends up with a history degree, and Mercy says that history degree is what directly led her into becoming a mechanic. I'm hearing here, like, wondering where's the logic in that, because I can't understand how a history degree leads you to become a mechanic. Now, it would have made more sense if she went to college or university for the engineering, realized that she enjoyed working on cars, and just dropped out so that she could continue on with her joy. That would have been a fine and logical thing to do, but no, she had to have a degree of some sort. Now onto some other things. I will say that the whole macho alpha domineering man thing, like, it was more annoying than an issue, because Mercy did hold her own, and the author did recognize the issues surrounding that and acknowledged it. But Mercy didn't let these two asses, Adam and Samuel, to kind of like get away with that. She didn't let them get away with them trying to fight over her and act like they have the right to control her or own her or whatever. So I was, I, you know, I recognize that there was an issue around there, but that fact that Mercy held her own and went and didn't take shit from those two men. But let's just talk about Samuel. So Samuel is the person that she was in this forbidden romance with, and I take huge issues with this whole situation. So when she was in this relationship with him, she was 16 years old, and Samuel was a full grown ass adult. And not only that, he was like centuries years old, so like adult. Like, let me tell you, I don't appreciate just because he looks young doesn't make him young, and he knew better. He manipulated Mercy into this relationship just so he could possibly have kids with her in the future. She was only good for him for the sake of children. And then he has the goal to be like, I never hid that from you. I'm like, no, but you made her believe that you actually loved her either way. You manipulated her to believe that this was not just for that, but because you loved her. And she fell in love with you. And also, she's a fucking child. You had no right to be there. But did he get kicked out of the pack? Did she get protected from his predatory behavior? No. He stayed in the pack, and then she got kicked out of it. Yet they love to say that they protect their women, blah, blah, blah. Yet she's the one being punished and he's the one being protected. And then later on, in present day, when she goes back there, the pack leader has the goal to say that she was kicked out for her own protection. Tries to gaslight her into this, and I think she sucks it on some level because she never fights back on that whole bullshit. I just be like, no. No. Thankfully, those two do not end up in a relationship when it comes to the book, and there's no inkling of it. But I have to say that the fact that it's very clearly implied that Adam is the one that she's going to end up with, although the book does not say this. We do see her at the end kind of like hinting at it. But I'm being here like, one, they barely interacted in this book, so tell me again why I should believe that they have this budding romance. And secondly, I find it funny that Adam's supposed to be an alpha dog, yet we never see him once show that he is, and prove that he deserves to be called an alpha dog. So, like, Mercy should be the alpha dog just because she's the one saving your ass all the time. Like, anyways, so I give this book 1.5 stars. I take huge issues with this white ass author feeling that she had the right to talk about these issues, these situations, and to defend reservations. I take huge issues with things. And again, really frustrated to see that nobody in the reviews thought to bring up these issues, didn't seem to notice them, didn't seem to care. I don't know. I tried to look for readers who were Indigenous who talked about this. I wanted to know what they had to say about it, but again, I couldn't find them. Maybe I wasn't looking far enough in the reviews, but because I would, obviously, these are just things that I know are issues. I see them as issues, and I would love to hear others who are Indigenous who may have decided to pick this up, what they had to say about it, but I really didn't like the treatment of Indigenous in this book. Moving on, the next one I read was The Vanishing Half by Britt Burnett. I gave this 3 stars. So this is about these 2 sisters who live in Mallard, the small town Mallard, and this town is all about, like, it's a small black town, but the town is more like trying to be as light as possible, so there's no one that's really on the darker side. And they run away at the age of 16, and then years later we see them as adults. Desiree, we see Desiree coming back to Mallard with her young child named Jude, who is much darker than everybody else there. And so we see Desiree dealing with the reason for why she's coming back home, and we see Jude dealing with what it's like to be living in this town as much darker, and how this town treats her because of that. but then we also see Stella's perspective as she goes off in the world to pass as white with a white husband and a child, neither of them knowing that she's actually black. Now, I really liked Desiree and Jude's perspective the most out of this book. And if this book had just been solely about Desiree and Jude and really talking about colorism and how being in this town where they are so obsessed with the idea of being as light as possible, and how Jude had to live through the nasty treatment that she experienced growing up and all that, I would have been all here for it because I really got a lot more out of their perspectives. Um, and then we also see Jude as a college student, meeting Reese, who is a trans man, and there in that was a very interesting discussion around what it was like for him. Now, I'm not trans. I don't know enough about trans issues to talk deeply about this. I have heard some slight issues around the treatment of that, but I'm not 100% sure of that. What I will say is that this author never spends time long enough on any of these people's stories to really get into the discussions and the issues that she brings up. And Stella's perspective was the most frustrating aspect of the story because I never once felt like we saw the consequences for her doing this. We didn't see it in her family really. It was just like slight rumblings and then disappears. Like she just got to go back to living white and not having to deal with any serious repercussions from it. And that was really frustrating to me. And there was like moments where I actually enjoyed this, like when a black family moves in across the street and all that happens and surrounding that. And then like when she starts to decide to be her own person instead of being what her husband wants her to be. And like there's just like this whole idea of her being this young woman who was his secretary, and how he takes advantage of that to like get the relationship that he wants, and how she just kind of like falls for that, and like now she's starting, and then I flatlines, like it just gets cut off. And like the moment that we are all looking forward to, which is the reunion of these two sisters, is one scene, and it wasn't much of anything. Like I was expecting Desiree to go in on her for abandoning her, and yet it was barely nothing. I was like, this book picks up and then drops all these threads, and it just doesn't feel like it has a lot of focus. Like, Britt Bennett has a beautiful, strong writing. I just think that she needs to focus in on what she actually wants to talk about, and really go in on it. She just needs to kind of break that barrier that I feel like is holding her back from really going in on these issues that she brings up. So it was, like I said, I give this one 3 stars. Then I read a romance novel called The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. This is a historical sapphic romance about Lucy, who, as her father was getting ill, was taking over his work as an astrologist and was doing like the calculations and writing out their conclusions of things, etc. And when he dies, her brother wants her to stop doing this, and she's getting desperate because not only is he threatening to take away her telescope, her ex-lover has gone off and gotten married without even talking to her about this. And so when she gets a letter from the Countess of Moth, decides to just pick up everything and go there, hoping that she will accept her there. The letter is asking for her father's help with some calculations and the study surrounding this whole French scientist who they're trying to translate and like work out what they're, all that jazz, whatever. It's not that much important. But yeah, I really enjoyed the romance of it. I enjoyed the whole chemistry and the scenes between them, and everything. I really enjoyed it. I do think that the romance was a little too convenient. It was a little bit hard for me to believe that they could have gotten away with everything, especially with the fact that there were so many times where they got caught out by people, and either they, whether that was just because there was a look, or they kind of sensed it, or they actually caught them. They either were just ignored it, didn't care, or they became allies, like full on allies that helped them. And I'm just being like, this just seems a little too convenient. I also kind of took issue with the author saying that gay men had it harder than them because they end up in jail. But I'm just like, a lot of women ended up in mental asylums. So I don't know historically if accurately, like, if women who were lesbians or bisexual or whatever ended up in mental asylums because they got cut out. But I wouldn't be surprised by that. So I'm kind of like hesitant to like agree with that supposition fully. Um, but so it was a little bit hard for me to suspend my disbelief when it came to like certain things. Also, the whole conflict between them was resolved like within the day, within the same day that they decide, like, this whole conflict happens, it gets resolved. And it wasn't much of a conflict anyways. It didn't feel like much of a conflict. And it gets conveniently resolved. So this ties in with another issue that I have, which is the fact that Catherine was in a abusive marriage. And at the beginning of this book, when they first start working their way towards having sex for the first time, you can sense that Catherine is suffering from PTSD of some sorts. Like she is triggered by some things, and so she has a trauma response. And I really appreciate at the beginning how Lucy responded to that and was patient and willing to take it as slowly or as fast as Catherine wanted to go. But as soon as they have sex, it's like the author just either forgot that she had PTSD, or she believed that somehow having this healthy relationship just takes away her PTSD, which is not true. And I feel like this was a missed opportunity to deal with how abuse in whichever form it is, how it is traumatic and it can affect the mental health of the person who is the victim of that abuse, and how that can affect future relationships. And it was like, again, like, it was a missed opportunity, but then also it plays into the convenience of the result of this conflict, because there was like something that happens outside of this that makes Lucy angry, and she's in the library like throwing things down, and Catherine comes to the door, and at first she hesitates because this reminds her of her husband, but then she realizes like, oh, I'm not scared. And this is like why she's like, oh, she goes to her, and then they're like, I don't, and they come back together because of that. So I'm like, again, it's just a little bit convenient because you completely forgot. Hannah talked about the fact that she had been suffering from trauma surrounding this her abusive relationship, but then you bring it back in just to like resolve this abuse. So okay. But the main conflict of this book I absolutely loved because of how it got resolved. I just was like, I loved it. It left me cackling because those men. And if you read this, you know what I mean talking about. The last thing that I didn't particularly like was how the whole Lucy's brother Stephen situation resolved. So Stephen ends up doing something that was awful. Like the fact that he did this causes her. She had published a book within this book, and he, like, she hadn't named who she was, so like nobody knew that she was a woman. And um and then he does something that reveals who she is, that who the author is, which is her. And so he basically caused her chances, her validity, to be torn to shreds. And throughout the book, you can tell that Stephen is jealous. I always sense from the beginning that Stephen was jealous, first because of her relationship with their father, which was much closer than he was with him, and then now by what he did. I think he was jealous because not only was she a woman that succeeded at something, but the fact that she was able to succeed faster and better than he was with his art. So when he comes and apologizes to her, I can't believe that it was authentic. I just can't believe that it was sincere. And the fact that she accepts it, and the fact that the author tried to twist what he did into this whole I was trying to protect you bullshit, it does not ring true. Because if he was trying to protect her, he would have never revealed who she was. Like, he threw her to the wolves by doing that. And we're supposed to believe that he was doing it to protect her? Like, give me a break. So I was hoping that when he came to apologize, we would see her stand up and not accept his apology and throw him out the door. But she doesn't do that. And I'm just here being like, it kind of like ruins some things about Lucy's character, that it doesn't feel like she is as willing to stand strong on her own merits as I would have liked. Because when she apologized to him, I mean, like, but then you're saying that it's okay for him to have done that, which is not okay. It's fine to forgive him, but he wasn't authentic, and you have to believe that he wasn't sincere. He was not sincere. Anyways, I gave it 3 stars just because I really enjoyed every moment that Lucy and Catherine were alone together, and I just love those moments so much. So, moving on, I read Heartstopper 1, and then today I read the second volume. So, Volume 1 and Volume 2, which I gave both of them 5 stars, and I absolutely love the series. And I hate that I have to wait for them because I'm borrowing them from the library because I can't be buying more books right now. So, I'm just having to be patient. But I absolutely love Charlie and Nick. So this is about Charlie, who's kind of like this awkward teenage boy who meets Nick, who ends up in a class. I think they're like a year apart in school, but and I don't know, I can't remember, but like they end up being in a class together, and Nick starts having a crush on Charlie, but he thinks that he's straight, so we see him kind of like struggling with that, but then also we see Charlie struggling with the fact that he has feelings for Nick, and so like these volumes are all about their romance, and I'm absolutely loving every single one of them so far. I know that these characters were that these graphic novels were inspired from her novel, and I have heard some problematic aspects for that book. I want to read it for myself to see, because it's surrounding the whole mental representation, mental health issues that she writes, and that it's quite problematic. So I want to read that to see what my take is on that. I know somebody said that either in the 3rd or 4th volume it's brought into the story, so I want to see if she corrects herself on that, because she was 19 when she wrote that book. So I kind of want to give her the benefit of the doubt that she was writing this from a child's view and uneducated. I'm not making excuses for her, but I want to at least give her like some leeway on that. But we shall see how bad that representation is. But again, I gave both volumes 5 stars. Then I DNF'd Luster by Raven Leilani. Now, if I had known that this was being compared to Queenie, I wouldn't have even picked this up, because these kind of stories are just not for me. I don't like the messy, impulsive character that just acts recklessly, makes decisions that could cause like huge repercussions on her, like career wise. Like specifically in this book, Luster, like her actions could cause her to lose her job. I like when she's talking about things like having sex with multiple people in the office with her coworkers. I mean, here like you could lose your job, and it's somebody who's like. So it makes me anxious just reading these people's like life, and their choices, because it just makes me so like anxious, and I don't really like it. I also think that there were some like issues that I'm like not here, but like why did you have to bring it up if it's not something that you're going to talk about or deal with? Like, so like there's just something that she brings up that she never really deals with, and this book is quite short, so that makes sense that some things are not going to be dealt with. But yeah, it just wasn't for me. I don't even know why I tried this because I should have known better, but I really didn't pay attention to what it was being compared to. I didn't really like Queenie either. I just didn't like the writing, and I didn't like the whole messy. Like I said, I already had this. So again, I didn't have this. Then I read Propicio by Leon Ross, and this is inspired by Jamaica, and this is a magical realism novel about these people from this island that all have like powers, and this is happening within like one day. We meet like these characters that are all dealing with something, and it's leading up to a storm of some sorts, whether that's a magical storm or like metaphorical storm or a real storm, who knows. But yeah, I throughout this book I kept thinking that this was some kind of like nightmare that she was writing out. Like it read like a nightmare to me, like a disjointed dream. It felt like a dream, that was a nightmare. Just in the way that it was written. And like I didn't mind the weirdness of it. I just kind of, like 3/4 of the way I lost steam with this story. I got impatient with it because nothing was happening. Like the stuff just makes you think that we're going somewhere, that there is a driving force within this story, that there's an actual plot. But there really isn't one. Like there is a storm and everything, but like it just wasn't going anywhere. Like I read like over half of this book and nothing really had happened. Like things are happening but nothing is happening at the same time, and I just wasn't really enjoying reading this book. It was interesting. It was interesting in the way of like the powers and like all of that, and there was like some interesting things that are being talked about through the story, but overall I just couldn't enjoy it. It's hard to explain, but like and like just and I also think that something just got strange for no reason. Like there was like things that happened that were just like weird and strange but had no purpose to the story or plot. Yeah. Next is Between the World and Me by Sorry, I'm not gonna say because I've heard their name pronounced so many times, but I can never get it out. Ta-Nehisi Coates. Okay, so this is his memoir, but it's like he's writing this to his son, discussing. I'm just gonna read what it has to say here because. So, in a profound work that pivots from the biggest questions about American history and ideals to the most intimate concerns of a father for his son, Coates offers a powerful new framework for understanding our nation's history and current crisis. So, throughout this, I could really feel Coates' love for his son, and through like how he expresses talking things through the issues surrounding race and just I don't know. This book felt very personal in a lot of ways, and sometimes I was like, should I be reading this? But then I realized that we can't be turning a blind eye. We need to hear their stories and in order to understand. We cannot break down those systems if we're not willing to understand and listen and hear what they have to say. It was powerful. It was moving. And I will be buying this book as soon as I am able to. So, yes. And I can connect things that he has to say from other things that I have heard other people talk about and discuss and have seen. So, I want to read everything else that he has written. I think it's like We Were 8 Years in Power, I believe. That's the next one I want to read. He's also worked on Captain America comic books and the Black Panther comic books, and if I can borrow up in the library, I will be getting the Black Panther ones. I did not realize that there was comic books for those, so I will be picking those up if I can. So anyways, 5 freaking stars, and I would recommend everybody to read this. The last thing that I had to talk to you about is Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. I ended up DNFing this one, and I was 54% into this book. This is another one, I like with Propicio, where I lost steam like halfway through the book, whereas I finished that one. I just couldn't finish this one. I just got tired. It was like all of a sudden I was just tired. This book is just way too long. Uh, and she goes on side tangents talking about these other characters that have nothing really to do with the main plot or with the characters, other than the fact that they connect to them by being their brother or uh, a friend of the father or whatever. So sometimes I couldn't understand why these characters needed to be. Maybe if I finished this, I would have known why we needed Hadley's perspective. So let me just talk about what this is about. So we see in the mid 1900s, Marion Graves, who is determined to be a pilot, and she ends up getting a patron in Barclay McQueen, who is dangerous and rich. And she ends up going on a worldwide trip, piloting trip. What's it called? She circumnavigates the globe by flying over the North and South Poles. And she ends up disappearing. And then in 2014, we meet this actress named Hadley, whose career is kind of been ruined, sort of. And we see her director, producer, I don't know which, friend comes to her with this possibility of playing the role of Marion in this film, talking about the events leading up to her disappearance. And the synopsis tells you that their lives somehow intersect, and maybe I would find out the purpose of Hadley's perspective if I had finished this. And I'm guessing I have an idea from what I have skimmed read of the ending of like how they do so in some way, possibly. I still don't think that there is much of an intersection, but I just didn't enjoy Hadley's perspective. If this book had all been about Marion and had been cut down like 100 pages, I would have absolutely loved this book because Marion's perspective was the best part of this book. And really enjoy seeing her fighting tooth and nail to become this pilot and having to struggle with her decisions and what it may mean in the future by choosing to, so all that. But this book was just way too long, and I couldn't handle it any longer. So anyways, those are all the things that I have read. I am in the middle of reading A Dowry of Blood, which I have totally forgotten what the author's name is, but I am halfway through that, and I should be finishing that up this Friday. I am enjoying it. You can definitely see how this author, I just love it because it's like told through the story, and of like seeing this abusive, almost like kidnapper hostage situation. That's what it feels like to me, but someone else described it as an abusive relationship, which I can see. I just feel like she was stolen in a way. And so like it's just like really interesting to see how she is slowly waking up to certain things and realizing that, oh, this is not a healthy relationship. This is not good. So that is what I'm in the middle of. I will be starting this one tonight, Love and Other Disasters, but this probably I'm trying to just really read like 100 pages a day of this, so it's gonna take me a little bit, but I am very much excited for this book. And this is a romance novel between a divorced woman and a recently they recently came out as non-binary, and they are both competing in this cooking show. I don't know exactly what she is competing, what she wants to use the money for, but I know they want to use the money to donate to a, what's it called? It's an LGBTQ plus organization, I believe. So Dahlia Woodson is the divorced woman, and London is the one that, oh, and they came out as non-binary on television. Okay, so it doesn't name the organization. I thought it named the organization in the synopsis. But anyways, so we see them having to be in this competition with each other, but also possibly falling in love with each other and the complications around that, considering I've heard a lot of good things about this book, and I just got this like a couple months ago, so seriously, it's about freaking time that I read this. I also have 4 books out from the library right now, and I have like 4 books ready to be picked up. But the 4 books that are out right now is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, which I am freaking excited, and that will be my next book that I'll be picking up. The Famished Road by Ben Okri, Gideon of the Ninth by Tasmin Muir, and A Black Woman's History of the United States, which is a nonfiction. So those are the 4 books that are my next reads as in the next week or so. I will most likely go back to weekly wrap-ups because this video is already way too long, and yeah, if I continue to read as much as I have been, weekly wrap-ups will probably be the best way to talk about them. So anyways, if you have stuck this long through this video, thank you. Leave a heart, any color, actually a purple heart. Leave a purple heart down below to let me know that you got to the end. And thank you all so much for watching.